The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hi, greetings and solutions.
And Thomas Sanherho. Hey, Thomas.
It's great to be here.
All right, first I want a little bit of program news. Next week, Apple has finally announced their spring event called Spring Loaded, I think is what they... Because...
Oh, nice.
As they said on MacBreak Weekly, that it means that you have to be loaded to buy all the stuff that Apple's going to be selling.
Definitely true.
So we'll be talking about that definitely next week. I got Joanne, I got Father Corey. We're going to be talking about all of the stuff that's going to be announced next week. And I'm hoping that there'll be an iMac announced so that I can upgrade this sluggard that is pulling me down and when I ever record. But that's for next week. But this week, we have a treat for you. We're going to explain everything you ever wanted to know about NFTs. I'm shaking my head and laughing because before this afternoon, I barely could figure it out. But I think we've got a handle on it.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I would believe so.
Thomas and Pat, you're gonna help me out on this. First, I want to mention that we've got a couple good links that we'll share in the show notes that will take you through some of the stuff you need to know. But what it comes down to, so you may have seen NFTs in the news, people buying and selling digital goods, unique things from celebrities, for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars or whatever it is, and thought, what the heck is this latest nonsense coming off the internet? That's what I thought. And so we're going to try to get into that. And the first thing to say is NFT stands for non-fungible token. So, Thomas, why don't you help me? What is a non-fungible token?
So a non-fungible token is something that is not tradable. You can't exchange it for something else that's just the same. And when you think about digital, there's always can I just right click on it, copy it, download it? Now I've got it, right?
Right.
And that's absolutely right. You absolutely can make a copy of the thing. Mm-hmm. But the like truly creative part of the NFTs is that they're signed on the blockchain. So while you might have a copy, you don't have that particular digital piece. And so when it's signed on the blockchain, if that piece is going to trade hands, a new piece of information is going to be added to the blockchain, which means that when it's bought or sold, that transaction is added to the blockchain so that you don't have a copy. You have that actual original file.
And the blockchain is essentially like a ledger book that lives on the internet. Many, many copies of the same exact ledger book so that it can't be falsified or fake. And every entry is unique and unerasable, correct?
Bingo.
Okay.
And I when I first started explaining the blockchain to my students when I was teaching, the analogy I used was, okay, if you took a Polaroid picture, right, and you turned it over and you signed your name on the back with a date, that is an indication of when that picture was taken. And so if somebody went and took that and stuck it on a copy machine, they might get a copy off of that Polaroid, but it doesn't have that information on the back of it. It doesn't have that signature with the date. And so if you wanted to trade hands officially, you would hand that Polaroid to someone, and then they would have to sign over your signature so that there was kind of an impression that this came next. This was the next move. And it would keep having to happen like that for that official version of the document to be moving from one place to another. And it would always have your signature at the very bottom.
Okay. So that's how the blockchain works. And so
right.
I just want to kind of get clear on this. A fungible token is something that is equal value to something else that is exactly the same. So if I have a dollar bill, it is fungible for any other dollar bill. You could have swap dollar bills and nothing is really changed fundamentally because we both still have $1 bills. But if I have, say, like let's talk about a book. I have a book from the bookstore, okay, and I could buy. There are thousands, tens of thousands of the latest book, the latest Stephen King novel at the bookstore, and I could buy any one of them, and I could photocopy it even. But there are only so many autographed copies of Stephen King novels that he's autographed, and so if I buy one of those, that makes that one is different. That is now. Well, maybe in the case of an autographed book, one of a number of those. It may not be unique by itself, but is one of a number. Now, you could then extend it to ebooks, say, okay, ebooks can be copied and sold by the tens of thousands, but an NFT of an ebook, if you got a non-fungible token attached to a particular copy of an ebook, that means you own that particular and unique digital copy of the book.
And that's actually not very far off of how libraries use ebooks currently, where there is one version that they are allowed to use, and that version gets checked out to people and returned. And it's not exactly the same, but it's a pretty close concept in how those, and that's why, you'll be put on a hold list when you're waiting for an ebook, and you're like, why am I waiting for an ebook? Well, this is part of the reason why.
It's almost a serial number. You could even think of it like as a serial number.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you could think of like artwork, because I think a lot of people think of NFTs and art, quote unquote, because I think we have a broad definition of art when applied to this. But yes. So like I could have Monet's, or I was just thinking like the Mona Lisa. Say I own the Mona Lisa. I own the Mona Lisa, the one copy. I know I don't own it. The Louvre owns it, but say I own it. Now I could sell print. I could have prints made of it. I don't want to get into selling prints, but I could make prints of it and I can hand all those prints out. But only one person can own the original. I can make as many copies as I like, but only one person can own the original, and that's another way to think about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and even by extension with prints, like I have a niece who has artwork that she sells, and so you could make a limited edition print and say there's 30 copies of this. When those are sold, you can't make another copy of that and sell it. It is not legal to do that. So you would have to make something. It could be similar. It could have a change made, but it's a unique copy that then you could make another 30 copies of that altered original. Okay. So, yeah, it's very, very similar to that.
Limited, signed, and numbered edition. I mean, we've heard of those sorts of things. The Franklin Mint sells those, right? The Donnie Marie Osmond commemorative plates, signed and numbered editions. I don't know where that came from. That came from the depths of my mind. Welcome to how my brain works. Well, in fact, we were talking... Yeah, yes, exactly. We were talking before we started recording about how this sort of stuff has existed for a long time. This isn't new, right? Pat, you mentioned one, right? The Second Life?
Right, Second Life, where you had to have little worlds that you could fly around to and stuff. You could build your own houses, and there was construction material you could do, but then you could go to different vendors and buy artwork to put on the wall, or buy a hat, or buy jewelry or whatever that you wore and used in Second Life. Was not transferable to anybody else. It was yours, and you had that unique copy of it in your wall.
So if you have a unique item in any digital environment, that's a non-fungible good, a digital good, you have a non-fungible token related to that digital good in that sense. So that
and then
makes sense.
there were ones that were like Farmville, where you could buy stuff, but those weren't really fungible in a sense that you owned your unique type of thing,
right?
But they were non-tangible objects.
But they were usually limited in the sense of you had to purchase them, whether through virtual currency or real currency. So there was a supply and demand. There was a limited supply of a thing.
And often timed, that you could only do this within a certain time frame. Right. So that made it unique in that respect, yeah.
And another example is if you've ever read the book Ready Player One or seen the movie, the character in it, what's his name? Oh, the character's name starts with a W. I forget. Anyway, but the whole point of the story was for everyone is competing to collect a non-fungible token, a digital good that would allow you to be the most powerful person in this virtual reality, the robes of Anorak and the golden key, and there's only one copy of these things that exist in that world. So if you're trying to understand what these are and how this works, these might be ways of understanding it.
It's just that to the average person out there, they've not encountered a lot of this techie stuff.
Right.
So it's all really weird to them.
It's weird to me too.
Well, yeah. But honestly, it's as weird. Like the reason that these things are taking off is just for novelty's sake at the moment. So I think that's one thing to kind of put in context, that these are taking off because they are so novel. But the turn of that is to say, well, the reason that the Mona Lisa is such a valued painting is because of the novelty of it, right? There is only one Mona Lisa, and so yes, you can own a print of the Mona Lisa. That's fine. Nobody's going to complain about that. There's many prints made, many copies made of it, but to own the actual painting itself it's not about the painting so much as it is the history that went along with the
provenance,
right? When it was made, who it was made by, and so all of those things build into it being as important as it is, and that's kind of what people are seeing here. It's just odd that they're willing to shell out so much money so quickly for them.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and it kind of reminds me of the one piece of artwork that was at Banksy did. That basically, when it unfolded, then it destroyed itself.
Yes,
it was definitely ephemeral and once in a lifetime, and never to be even kept anymore.
Well, it was a gimmick, so that when the auction finished, even the auction house wasn't aware that it was going to destroy itself. I mean, that's kind of
impossible.
It's kind of a brilliant thing. But now with artwork, like with the Mona Lisa, may not be the best example because the Mona Lisa itself, if I'm standing in front of it, I can see the strokes of not Van Gogh, Da Vinci's paint, brush, and I can see the paint, and I can see, like, I have an experience that you can't have otherwise. Whereas with a digital good, a video or a picture, if I download this guy bought the NFT for this video for $100,000. I can right click and download it and I get the same experience that guy does. He's not buying the original files and all that sort of stuff. So there is a bit of a difference. And that's why I kind of want to get into with this is what's the kind of the hype of it. So kind of deflate some of the hype and some of the differences. One of the things that I saw pointed out was that NFTs, so they're basically kind of like programs, and they can be coded in different ways. And one of the ways is that it can allow the original creator, the artist, say, to collect money each time the token trades hands. So if I sell my NFT for this digital art to somebody else, well, it could be as part of the original transaction that the artist gets 2%, 5%, 10% of that sale every time, which is an interesting thing that artists don't have the right to in regular physical art, which I think is interesting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this something that came up the other day as I was wandering around on my quest in various places, and I don't even remember exactly where I ran across it, but it was the start of a museum of digital art, where some of these things that instead of just being made and discarded after a time, this was somebody who was trying to collect digital art because it was, he thought, important that we keep a record of some of this stuff and archive it and allow people to walk through it virtually. And that's what this was a virtual museum that you could walk through.
Interesting. And then people could buy it and loan it to the museum, just like we do today with physical art. One of the other things that artists can do is they can also retain copyright and reproduction rights. So, I've sold you an NFT, but that doesn't mean that it all belongs to you in totality. I still retain control of the reproductions of this piece of work and the derivatives of it, that sort of thing.
I'm kicking myself for not having started this back in 2014 when I came up with this idea. And it was all about, I was teaching kids about metadata. And one of the things that I was teaching them about is that not in a not too distant future, you're going to see an instance where an artist is able to use the blockchain to prove that they own a digital work, so that if it gets put up and they want to make a copyright claim, all they have to do is just say, here's my blockchain proof. I did not give did not give that person permission, and no one in the blockchain gave them permission either. So they are definitely violating copyright by using this image.
This sort of thing could help with a lot of the copyright nonsense that happens on like YouTube, where you get copyright claims against videos for like music that the original artist, that the person making the claim is not the person who actually owns this music. Thomas, you put me onto a YouTube channel called Eckhart's Ladder, which is great. And he just went through this whole hassle because he has music that he has on each of one of his videos that he bought the rights to or has the rights to. I'm not sure if he bought them or if he was given them by the original artist. And this other guy comes along and claims all his videos on YouTube, and YouTube's like, it hits him with copyright claims on hundreds of videos at once and all this other nonsense. And it was, this guy had a platform that he could use and leverage, and he's a lawyer by trade. And it was still a hassle. Nice. Yeah, it was still a hassle for him. And he eventually got all that lifted off. But if there was a blockchain and a non-fungible token that the original artist had, it would be easy enough to go to Google and say, hey, this guy doesn't own the copyright on this, I do, and I say it's okay.
Right. I had it first.
Right. That would be interesting.
I think my other idea, so if anyone wants to take this idea, because I just don't have time to do it right now, but I'm surprised that the Magic the Gathering guys have not gone through and started making collectible NFT cards for a trading card game online. It would
Logan Paul did that. Did you see that?
I haven't seen that yet. No.
Logan Paul has made a Logan Paul Pokemon card.
Oh, there you go.
That he has been selling at $17,000 a pop. So let's talk about some of these. Okay, this is the stuff that has been getting the attention.
You talked to Father Andrew about that one?
yeah, I know. Careful, Father Andrew. He's collectible. There's a lot of this, like you said, there's this gold rush of NFTs out there for a lot of stuff that's going to be worthless. It's almost a pyramid scheme, I think, in this. People are really speculating on some of this stuff in the early days, hoping that they get off before the train crashes. There was one, NBA Top Shot is a site that launched last October and by the NBA for virtual video-based basketball trading cards. So it's a short video clip they called Moments that are sold in 5-card packs, and you can buy a moment of LeBron James top layups or something, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. And then they're being bought and resold in a secondary market. So there's one guy spent $200,000 for a video clip of LeBron James. And I'm thinking, like, a video clip that anybody could watch, that everyone who saw that game saw. And the thing that comes to me is this a moral use of money? And is this art? Those are the two questions that keep coming back to me. It's like, is this a good use of money?
Couldn't it be sold and given to the poor? That sounds like a quote I've heard before.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I fully support the patronage of the arts and and that sort of thing. But on the other hand, is this art? Some
of it could be, but some of it, as you say, a moment in time that an action is occurring. That's hard to see that there was intent of art there. You could say it was a sequential event,
right?
But
I think it comes back to what you're buying is this particular moment in time digitally. That we now have a way that because data is so important. Data has become such a huge market important piece of the way that we deal with everything in the world now. And I think we have called it the information age before, but we are really still in the infancy of what that means.
Right.
And, I was thinking about this. Okay, so what would this mean? What would an NFT look like that was really a valuable capture of a moment in time? And I was watching the Blue Origin attempt to launch today, and I was thinking, so if they're thinking of sending artists up into space, what if you were the person that made the first piece of digital art in space that's signed with a location signature that says exactly where you were and the time and everything, and it's all included in the art, and the value of that would be tremendous. And it would be, because it was the first time that it happened. A human was sent into space for something other than a scientific mission, was given, recorded in full detail where you were when it happened, and it's not so much about the art, because, you can make a cat picture, which is what a lot of these things are.
Right.
But it's more about the back end of it, the data that goes along with it, and the fact that it is unique. Yeah, the context to it.
Interesting. It's a new way of looking at this sort of of value of what is valuable. And I think that's part of what we're struggling with is we, especially those of us who are older, we see value in the physicality of a thing. Although we've always had this idea of once we have a thing in its context, it changes what we think of it. So a basketball is just a basketball until we think that basketball was the basketball that Larry Bird dunked in the 7th game of the I'm thinking I get basketball in the brain, of the NBA championship in 1986, that's the Babe Ruth final home run ball. That's not just any baseball. It's the Babe Ruth one. And suddenly that baseball isn't just a baseball. It has context and therefore it has value. Or put it in a Catholic context. What's that little? Right. That's just a little piece of wood, right? Yeah. That's not just a little piece of wood. That actually turns out to be a piece of the true cross of Jesus Christ. Oh, and now relics, for instance, are a physical good that are valuable because of their context. And I'm thinking more of second class relics in the sense of not a piece of the body of the saint, but a piece of something that either they owned or that or was touched to a first class relic or to the person. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, is that there's I like that. It's the context in which the thing exists. I think that helps.
Well, and the other point you made about is it moral to spend X amount of dollars on something, I think that depends upon context too.
Yeah.
If this working class father with 6 children goes out and buys an NFT for $700,000, that's immoral.
Okay,
because it could be used for family, it could be used for something else.
Right.
If somebody who's Bill Gates or somebody else buys it, it's probably just a drop in the bucket, and he may be donating it sometime down the road to some other good cause.
Yeah.
So it's also context there about the value and how much you're giving up for it.
That's true. I mean, I think of the guy who's there was the famous one of the first civilians to go up in orbit on the Russian rockets. And he spent $20 million for this ride. And people go, how could you waste $20 million on one trip into space? And it's like, to that guy, if I was a bazillionaire and someone said
$20 million is nothing. Yeah.
I would
for a trip to space. Absolutely.
Where do I sign? Yeah, to go into space. I mean, isn't that worth it? So I guess
from a guy from Austin.
Oh, right. So yeah, I guess I can see some of that. So I don't know. All right. Well, I think that's a good introduction to NFT. It bears watching and it bears thinking about. I mean, that's an important aspect to this. We need to think about these things and not just dismiss it as more that internet silliness like I did earlier, but to kind of really approach it as, what is this new thing and how is it changing us? And I think that's one of the things we should be doing on this podcast, is to think about how technology affects us, how it's changing, and how we might need to change to adapt to it in one sense. So that's good. The only thing I wanted to add is that there's a little side note, is NFTs are not just for intangible goods or digital goods. They're also using it for things like real estate transactions on the blockchain.
That would make researching a title a lot easier if you had a blockchain.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a lot of things, right. Digital identity, verifying identity theft could become harder to do if we had something like a blockchain like digital ID verification, which I think we talked about recently on a recent episode, or we're going to. I can't remember whether we were going to talk about it or we have talked about it, but it definitely is something that we're going to be discussing a lot more of. Yeah. All right. I think that does it for this topic for now. We'll move on. I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons for their fungible tokens that make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including KDK, Christopher B., Robbie C., Andrew W., and Simon M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And I should have said before, I want to hear from listeners. If you have questions about NFTs, if you have comments, or you want to respond to anything we said, we'd love to hear from you. technology@sqpn.com. So let's move on to some more of our headlines. There's a really interesting headline here. We talked last year when Apple and Google came up with this plan to have this COVID contact tracing framework that would be available in both iPhones and Android phones that local governments could used to create COVID apps for their areas. We talked about how we weren't worried too much about it. I think we were generally, and I'll speak for myself, I was generally not worried about this being used for nefarious purposes by governments to track us beyond what Apple and Google said they were that this was for. And because Apple and Google had both promised that this was about privacy and that the tracking could be done anonymously and no one's going to be banging down your door to tell you that you need to be hauled off to the quarantine. And there was some concern about that. Well, here's an example of in a story about with some of our confidence being upheld. The British National Health Service has an official COVID-19 app. They've had it for a little bit. And both Apple and Google have blocked the latest update, which is interesting because it had expanded the amount of data it collects on the users of the app. And Apple and Google said you may have good intentions, but that's too far, and you've gone beyond the bounds of what we will allow. What do you think of this?
I think it's good that they're putting the line in the sand and saying, okay, this is valuable, but you've gone too far to say that you want X, Y, and Z. Right. That's not what the original app you said it was going to do, and that gets too personal.
Yeah. It was what I would have done is have optional location tracking features that would allow users to share their location logs with the health service. I think they wanted that to get more statistical data on how people were coming out of lockdown and interacting with each other. Again, it all sounds very admirable. It sounds like people would be able to opt in, but both Apple and Google said slippery slope. I think they didn't say exactly what was. They just said this went beyond the bounds and we're not allowing it. It's interesting to me to see these big companies flexing their muscles against basically national governments. That this is an interesting moment in which corporations' power versus nation state power are coming up against each other, and we're seeing how this will play out. It's an interesting it's set of circumstances even beyond just the particular circumstance of the COVID-19 app. So I'm curious to see how this will continue to play out and that sort of thing.
Especially considering there's been so much discussion about whether some corporations are flexing their muscles to control things, and some people are saying, oh, no, they shouldn't be doing that. So it's almost like saying, okay, these are what we intended for this to do, and we're doing it. It's not like, okay, we're coming back in and getting more from you than we told you originally, which is obviously one company or more's problem.
Right.
But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this continues to go and where this this sort of thing goes with other parts of these big companies flexing their muscle of their consumer marketplace power versus because the one thing that a nation state has that corporations don't yet is they have the power of use of force. When it comes down to it, ultimately. They have the law on their side. They have the police on their side. They can enforce their laws as they see fit. On the other hand, corporations can say we're not doing business in your country, but that's a whole nother.
Well, and I like in this case too that it's the corporations are looking out for the people where the people might not care. This is one of those things where it's like people very often don't care and they just click off on whatever. Sure,
and then they're in danger later.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the thing is it's optional, but if a lot of times this stuff is complex or people get dialogue box fatigue and they just click okay, and these companies are acknowledging that this kind of can happen. So
and technically speaking, this is the one of the big issues here was that this was a soft opt-in, which means that it records the data, but it doesn't report the data until you say it's okay to report the data, which is a very hairy issue.
Security about the security problems if it gets breached. Yeah,
right.
Yep, exactly.
Once the data exists, then it's now has to be kept safe, and that's the problem, which actually leads into our next story, our next headline.
Very much so.
There's a school custodian. This woman who was working as a school custodian. It says school custodian. She was working for a private contractor that was cleaning schools and disinfecting them after hours and that sort of thing. But she had gotten a job working for them part-time, and her employer said to her, by the way, you have to install this app on your personal phone. This is an important aspect of this, that will track you when you are at work and when you are not at work. So what it does is it creates a geofence around a particular area and records when you enter that geofence and when you leave. So when you enter the grounds of the school and when you leave the grounds of school, we don't track you. They said we don't track you where you go and what you're doing within that geofence. And she objected to that and I think she had good reason to object, which is, this is her personal phone. Okay, that you were demanding that you put this app isn't just on my phone when I'm at work. This app is now on my phone when I'm at home, when I'm going out to visit other people. No matter what I'm doing, this app is there. And what data is this app collecting besides what you tell me it's collecting? And then third, who is keeping track of this data, this private data about my comings and goings? How is this being protected and how is this being safe? So I think she has good reason to be concerned. What do you think of this one?
Well, it's kind of like the old time card analogy that, yes, I can understand being able to record when somebody goes and comes, but you use something that's independent of the person. You don't make them use their personal item. If you want to issue a badge to them that has a location tracker that they can see within that building where you are.
Right.
I can understand that. On the other hand, I know was one of the companies that did that. People were concerned that they would be tracked into the bathroom and see how much time they spent in there, which is an invasion of privacy.
Yes.
So even in that case, you have to look at the limitations of it. But yeah, I think she has all the right there to say, not on my phone.
What could an app from your employer, on your phone do besides what they claim? It could be tracking who you call on your own time, where you go, for who you spend time with, and all kinds of data. Like our phones are now our connection to the world, and they are with most of us all the time, and they have microphones and cameras on them. I mean, this is, if you really want to get paranoid about it, an app that your employer insists you put on your phone could be a complete invasion of privacy, and that is concerning. Now, say your employer does make you put an app on your phone and you don't want to lose your job and you go along with it. What could you do to mitigate how much information they have on you outside of the ostensible reason for putting it on there during working time?
Well, one of the things that you make sure of is that don't give it any permissions that you don't want it to have, right? Yeah. So if you don't want it to have location access and that's not part of what you need it for, don't give it permissions to do that. And go in and check the permissions. If you don't know how to do that, it's different for every phone, but in the settings, there should be a setup for the permissions that are given to each app individually. And you can go in and check that. And if there is an issue, if there is an overreach that you see, bring it up with your human resources department and with your IT department and say, hey, look, I have noticed this. I don't think that's the way it should be. Could you explain to me why? And they need to have an explanation for that. That needs to be a part of why they need to be able to justify why they have that permission asked for. It's a sticky situation. I like the way that one of the apps that I have for my current employer, the way it's handled is it doesn't attach to my contacts at all, which is annoying if I have someone in my contacts that I want to call on the app, but it means that they're not pulling my information into their system, which is good. That's that kind of separation is the separation you want. And so you do have to pick a little bit of inconvenience in order to maintain safety for yourself in that situation.
I actually had a client that the employer wanted them to install an app. This was 2 or 3 years ago. And she thought, if I do this, the implication is they can erase my phone at any time because now it's got company information or company app on it. So she just went out and got a rent-a-phone type thing from Walmart or someplace like that and used that and just said, oh yeah, this is my phone. Right. And that's all they saw was what she had on there for the business, because people don't realize that if you are using your personal phone for business, many apps when you do that, it gives permission for the employer to wipe the phone if they think that it might have fallen into enemy hands, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of it. And I've had many clients that came up and said, do I really want to allow this? Do I want to do this? And I'd say, if it were me, I wouldn't. I'd have another phone.
The one that I have to sign into every single time I want to get to anything. And again, it's annoying, but I understand why, and I like it. I like the fact that it is that difficult to do things.
It used to be that employers, if they wanted you to have a phone, they buy you a phone. Like, and people carry two phones.
Doing that.
Yeah. And if my employer, which I'm the boss, but if I worked for somebody who wanted me to have that sort of thing, I would totally, okay, buy me a phone, because I don't have a phone.
Right. You're not required by law to have a phone already. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about this, like I would analogize it. It's like your boss wanting to install a camera in your home to make sure you're working when you're working remotely during work hours. And that camera is never going to be on outside of work hours.
Well, or apps. I mean, a lot of people have machines that they bring home from work, machines. And I'm sure that most of that is you are required to log in on that machine. It keeps track of how often you're logging in and all that. And that's their data, but you don't use that for anything else. You just reserve that and keep it for that business. Right.
Never use an employer provided computer or phone or whatever for personal stuff. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. This employee privacy is another area where we really need to quickly develop laws and regulations that protect everybody's rights, and we have to be very clear on what can and can't be done, because it is a bit of a Wild West situation for a lot of these things. So that's an important aspect of it. So our last headline, this is a little Apple headline, just in general, ahead of next week's big Apple event. But Apple has been sneaking out some interesting things ahead of their event, and one of the things they did was Apple Arcade is their service where for $5 a month you get access to all the games in Apple Arcade. It's sort of like the old analogy. It's like Netflix for video games, for phone games. Or actually, it's not just for phone, because it works on tablet, your iPad, it works on your Mac, it works on Apple TV. So it's a Netflix for gaming, and I like it. I've had this almost from the beginning. My kids like a bunch of the different games. It costs nothing to let them try a new game. The best part is there are no in-app purchases, no freemiums. It's wonderful to have to be able to play a game and not run up against, well, you could continue to play if you paid me $2, or no ads, no none of that. But for a long time there was some good games, but there wasn't a great selection. However, they just released a big update that added a whole bunch of interesting games. There's like sports simulation games are huge in consoles. There's an NBA sports game in there now. There's a Final Fantasy is like a role-playing video game, not a multiplayer, a single player in this case. But the same people who brought the Final Fantasy franchise to video games, they've created a new one that looks really cool that uses real dioramas. They created physical dioramas and then mapped the digital characters into it, so it has this real look to it. And the one I'm really enjoying right now is the Star Trek Legends, which is it's a
trading card game.
It's sort of it sort of works a little bit like a Magic the Gathering. That it's that sort of, you're leveling up your characters as they go through adventures, and you have to do all these different things to make them better and increase their stats, and then you go head to head in battles. It's a lot like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering, that sort of stuff. But so what do you guys think of this? Is Apple kind of getting it, or I mean, are they always destined to be this lower tier of casual gaming compared to Nintendo and Microsoft, Xbox, and PlayStation? What do you think?
Wait! You just said lower tier casual gaming and said Nintendo is not that. It's like no. Nintendo is this is totally this is something I think Nintendo wishes they had done.
Oh, okay, all right,
yeah, absolutely, because this is very much a family. Because Nintendo is very much more family friendly, more about people playing together, and I think that if they had the reach that Apple does, they would have done something like this before now.
Okay. I mean, in some ways it's a little bit like Stadia, Google Stadia, that whole idea, which is like Google's attempt to get into this, which is to get the high end games available for people who don't have high end consoles, right? You don't have to buy the heavy duty hardware to play it.
Well, the other thing I see that this does is that people who are on one platform often would like to play with somebody who's on another platform or play the game similar to them. And Apple has been a walled garden. And now they're opening up that wall and saying, okay, let's get some of the games that are over here that are really good. Maybe people in this platform would like to enjoy those too. I think that may be also a way to gather in people that might not have even looked at arcade before. And now they say, oh, well, my boy can play X on there where I don't have to go get this on this other platform.
Okay.
Right. And I think also you kind of hit the nail on the head. Google did it and they did it poorly. And now somebody else has picked it up and is doing it well. Right. That's it.
Well, they came out about the same time. Yeah.
It's Google's MO is they're always out in front. They do something and it fails spectacularly. And then someone else goes, oh, we could do that. Yeah, exactly. And they kill it.
Well, that's two interesting corporate philosophies. Google is like, let's just go for it. Like, just go for it. Throw it out there, like Google Glass, all these other things. And it's like, yeah, like a bunch of nerds. Yeah, it's just like we're a bunch of nerds and we're making something cool. Just throw it out there. Sure, it doesn't work all like perfectly, and it's not as good as we'd hoped. Oh, yeah. And everyone's disappointed. Whereas Apple's like, wait. Okay, here it is. Like now which isn't to say that Apple always comes out of the gate and hits a home run. Wow, that's a mixed metaphor. But they generally have tended to have more successes in these sorts of things than failures.
Yeah.
So they take their time.
Well, and they don't flood it all at once. Like on Apple TV Plus, it was like they had a few things and they're adding more things, and now they're opening them up to some other entries that are not in their walled garden.
Right.
And I think they're doing the same thing with the gaming, saying, okay, now we put out a certain amount, now we're adding more, now guess what's coming,
Right. Right.
It keeps the interest going. You haven't thrown it all out there at once.
Well, and I think that's the way these services keep their numbers. It's the number of new subscribers is what they care about. It's not so much, how many people they have subscribed already. It's how many new subscribers they have coming on board. So it's a smart move to kind of keep it back and just and I'll be honest, like I'm a gamer. I am a
hardcore.
I'm a gamer who sits down and mods Skyrim so that I'm still playing Skyrim 10 years after it came out, and I'm modding it, and I still actually haven't even beaten the game, if I'm honest. I just run around in the world and do the fun stuff that I want to do, right? But that that's me. But that's not a majority of people who are now playing video games, and that's I think that the people who are still saying, "Well, you're not a real gamer," don't understand what it means to be a gamer anymore, and that's the hazard of like making fun of people who play Fortnite it doesn't make Fortnite any less popular by saying, well, that's not a real game. It is.
It is. It's just in a different variety than what had come earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah, disdaining those who've come after, who aren't quite as dedicated, don't spend as much time as you on a thing. It's not the best way of being a fan. I mean, if there's one bad part of geek culture, it's that
snobbery.
The snobbery that sometimes comes out. Yeah. I know. It's amazing the numbers of people who play these casual games. Like one of the things that they've done in this latest release of games on arcade is they've got a lot of these classic great Apple iOS games and repackaged them in arcade. So you got your Monument Valley, you got Threes. Oh my gosh, Threes. My wife Melanie has been playing Threes constantly for the last 5 years. Like it's a fidget for her now. It's like something to keep her hands busy.
It's mesmerizing.
Yeah. But it's like it's great because these were separate purchases before, which I've already made on most of these, so it doesn't help me. But it's in there and it's in the part of the package. I mean, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. Like so. When you get I'm trying to think of like the analogy with like Netflix, you've got this big catalog, and you got your Queen's Gambit, and you got your Witcher, but you got, a whole boatload of other things in there as well that, I've already got the service. I might as well check this out, right. That sort of thing.
Comedy specials.
Right. Pacific Rim, Into the Black, or what was that one? The anime that I watched that was, it was all right. It was interesting. But so interesting to see Apple doing, kind of doubling down on this and moving forward on it. I'm curious to see whether this is a precursor to improved Apple TV hardware and that sort of stuff, and whether that means it means anything for their future hardware plans. But we'll have to see. Okay, I think that does it for our headlines this week. Let's move on to our picks of the week. Thomas, why don't you go first?
All righty. For my pick this week, I am recognizing a YouTube channel that I enjoy far too much. I love this guy's channel. It's fantastic. The channel's called How to Make Everything. And when I first started watching him, it was just, he was just on this kind of kick to just make things, right? So he wanted to see how much modern stuff he could make individually by himself. So for example, like a sandwich, how could you make a sandwich without going to the grocery store and buying the ingredients for a sandwich, right? Like, so he went and figured out how to make bread and how to raise crops and the whole 9 yards. And so, but the cool thing, this is what really makes this worthwhile, right? It's not just watching this guy goof around with stuff, but he keeps records of how long it takes him to do these things. So he made a suit out of stuff that he wove himself.
Wow.
But and it's terrible. It's a horrible suit. Like, and I think that he will gladly admit that it's a horrible suit, but he kept track of the amount of man hours and at minimum wage, what that would look like. So he has a record of how much the suit that he made costs at minimum wage hours spent. And it's fantastic to watch. But about a year ago, and it's been kind of thrown off by the pandemic. So, don't really judge harshly on this, but about a year ago, he decided he was going to go back to the basics and he was going to really try and start, okay, we haven't invented anything, so I can't look this stuff up. I need to go and learn from the ground up how to do everything. And so he started over in the Stone Age and said, okay, well, what are the first tools that men needed, that humans used? And he learned how to make them. So he learned how to flint knap. He learned how to, how to grow crops, how to make bread, it is intense. And so for the last year or so, every once in a while he'll throw in a goofy video that's, just him doing something like really off the wall. But for the last year or so, he's been building his skill set from the Stone Age. And so he's up to the Bronze Age now. And I think he just got into the irons and to smithing the harder metals. So but it's amazing to watch him do this because, and every once in a while he'll revisit stuff because he's like, okay, like we learned how to make pottery. The latest video was we learned how to make pottery, but let's go back and really see if I can use my potter's wheel that he made from scratch to make a real pot. And so he went to some real potters and had them help him learn how to make his pottery out of like really spin the pot, really spin the thing and make a real pot out of it. So highly recommend it. Very, very informative, surprisingly informative, on top of being very entertaining.
Wow, this is cool. I'm looking at the list
Sounds
of videos.
Sounds like something your kids would enjoy too.
Yeah.
Oh, they love it. They adore it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, unlocking how to make Roman concrete. Mongolian recurve bow. Well, yeah, this looks really cool. I love channels where people are exploring the depths of a interesting thing, where they have almost a mania about a thing. Like Jörg Sprave, the German guy who loves making like non gunpowder projectile weapons and just has way too much fun with them. But it's all interesting engineering things. I love that sort of that sort of channel. So that's really cool.
Well, and I think that my favorite part about this channel too is that, like, with a lot of them, you have a person that's got years worth of a hobby in them behind their making the YouTube channel. This guy has no experience with anything. It almost seems like he's just like, he's like just your completely average person. And he just got interested in learning this stuff and said, you know what, I'm going to do it. But the keeping the record, that's the brilliant thing to me, because he'll get to the end of it and he'll say how much it would have cost, minimum wage, how much it cost for me man hours wise to do this. And it really makes you feel better about, where you are in life, where it's like, gosh, it's so easy to go to the store and just grab olive oil and not have to worry about growing the olives and picking the olives and squeezing the olives and keeping the olive oil.
Right. There's one that's like making a $228 sheet of paper. Like it
exactly.
costs $228 to make a sheet of paper.
Wow.
Well, and part of that's efficiencies of scale, right? I mean, it doesn't
you do
cost
it once, versus 10,000 times. Yeah.
Right. So interesting. Wow. Very fascinating. I like that. Thank you. That'll be a lot of fun. It's going to not waste a lot of my time, but it's going to take a lot of my time watching this. So very good. Pat, what's your pick?
Well, following on our topic of virtual reality and all, I've had a Quest 2, and I've had it for some time now, and I'm really thoroughly enjoying it. But one of the problems is that with a lot of people, they get headaches from it because of the pressure that the headset puts on your head and on your cheeks. And I've been following along a lot of people that were talking about this and what things were out there and what things to try to relieve that. So I went ahead and invested in what they call a Halo. It's not a brand, it is a type of headset. And instead of just the strap that goes over your head and connects and you tighten up with pulling straps, this is basically like you've got a padded area in front and a pad behind your neck, and then something that basically you just turn a little wheel and it tightens it there.
Okay.
And it distributes the weight around your head as
like
opposed to concentrating it.
Right.
But Halo, because it goes all the way around.
Right.
So I just got it. It was really surprisingly easy to install. Basically, I just looked and saw how you take the old strap off, and then these two little pieces slide onto the existing frame, and then you have to kind of learn how to adjust it and stuff like that. But I have to admit, the last 2 times I played, it's like, oh, I don't have that extra tension area that I normally do.
The thing I noticed about that, yeah. So the way the Quest works now is it's the pressure. It holds it on by pressure, around the back of your head, but also against your the area around the orbit of your eyes, and so this is
your cheeks,
cheeks, and in my case, my nose, because that's the most prominent feature there. So it pushes on my nose. That's one of the things I've noticed. Whereas with the Halo, the Quest will just kind of hang in front up against your face.
They call it floating it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that would be interesting.
And it feels a little loose, and you think, oh, is this thing going to come off?
Yeah.
But the way and some people have said that they use a head strap with it, and my particular one came with a head strap, and I'm finding I don't think I need it because it's already fine. And because you can adjust it quite a bit, and it makes it real easy to take off because you just flip up the back and it's off. Whereas the one now, it's like I have to kind of pull the glasses out or pull the headset off of my head, and trying to get it on somebody else to let them try it is not going to be as easy with a traditional strap as with this other one. You can just pull it on, make it real loose, get it set right, and then just tighten it down. It
would seem to work a lot better with people who have glasses that wear
well,
glasses.
That's one of my problems. Yes, I do have glasses.
It's always annoying when I take it off in the glasses. I have to point out, by the way, I keep getting emails from listeners complaining that we're making them want to buy an Oculus Quest, and their spouse keeps saying no. So I'm sorry, we're doing it again, but I promise. You will join us. We will absorb you.
In the total cost of things, it's a low cost entry, really.
Yeah, compared to
the two several $1,000 headsets that were out there before.
Even like a PS5, you got to buy the whole PS5 and the VR. So yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I'll say low cost. Sure, why not? So
it's less than a phone, less than a lot of things.
So I'll go for my pick now. Thank you, Pat, for that pick. That's a good one. Mine is another app for my Mac. I've been doing a lot of these, but all of my menu bar apps. I think it was Father Corey who challenged me to through all my, this is going to take a long time, folks, when I go through all my menu bar apps, because I got a lot of them. But my latest one is another one of the ones where it's one of the first things I install on a new Mac when I get a new Mac, or I sit down on a new Mac. It's called Yoink. And what it does is it's a way to, it's sort of like a third hand on your computer. So it's like or a drop shelf, sometimes they're called. You're moving files around on your computer. You got to move from this directory to that directory. Sometimes I got to drop it in, from this folder, and I have to drop it into this app. And you get multiple files, and you're trying to gather them up, and then your finger lets up on the click, and then suddenly they all drop wherever it was, and you got to figure out where it went. Oh, that sort of nonsense. Well, Yoink is a little shelf where as soon as you start dragging a file on your computer, it pops up on the side of the screen, and you just drag the file over and plop it there. And it doesn't move the file yet. It doesn't do anything with the file yet. That's sort of a placeholder. Then you go wherever you need to go, and you can then drag it from the placeholder to where you're wanting to drag it. And you can drag multiple files. You could drag one file. You could split it up. It's got a lot of options like that. One of the things it does, it integrates with my launcher called Alfred, where I can do something where I double tap the option key. I click a file, double tap the option key, and hit A, and it will add it to Yoink. And I don't have to even drag it anywhere. It just adds it. It's so quick. So it's really nice. It's got a lot of other features to it that you can get into. But the basic one is it helps you move files around without having to, drag them with your mouse wherever you got to go over multiple windows and that sort of thing. So it's a really nice little app. It's in the Set App subscription, which is Netflix for apps, because everything's a Netflix for something. Or you could buy it outright from Eternal Storms software, which I will provide the link in the show notes.
Kind of a visual clipboard almost.
It's a clipboard. Yeah, it's really great. There's several,
but multiple items, not just the last one you used, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Right, and it's for files specifically. Yeah. There are several different ones out there that do similar things. I actually used another one that's like this called Drop Zone, but I use that differently, and I will talk about that in a future pick of the week. But for now, Yoink is the one I'm recommending. All right, that does it for us now. So if you have any feedback, comments, questions for us, anything you'd like us to explore as a future topic on the show, you can let us know by commenting at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. We'll put links to all the items from our discussion and our picks of the week in our show notes at sqpn.com. Please, if you can, we really do appreciate it. It really helps us a lot. If you would write us a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from, and share the podcast with your friends. We're here to help people. That's what we're about. So we can help more people if you share the podcast. That's the number one way we get out there to new listeners. So until next time, Thomas Sinnerho, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
It was great to be here.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Always a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.